You used to be the one who listened, the one who showed up, the one who cared when no one else seemed to. You gave your time, your energy, your heart. You believed that kindness mattered, that being there for people was what good humans did. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. You started pulling back, not because you stopped caring, but because caring started to cost too much. And now you're quieter. You still feel everything. You just don't share it the way you used to. You didn't become quiet by choice. There are people who start out open, who lead with warmth, who naturally extend themselves to others without thinking twice. They're the ones who notice when someone's struggling, the ones who check in, who remember the small things, who make space for other people's pain even when they're carrying their own. And for a while it feels good. It feels like this is who they're meant to be, like their kindness has purpose. But kindness without boundaries doesn't stay sustainable. And most people who are naturally kind don't realize they need boundaries until it's too late, until they've given so much that there's nothing left, until they've been overlooked, taken for granted, or quietly discarded one too many times. And that's when the shift happens. Not loud, not dramatic, just a slow, quiet retreat inward. Something shifted inside you. Maybe you noticed it after someone you helped never returned the favor. Not in a transactional way, but in the basic human way of showing up when you needed them. You were there through their breakup, their job loss, their family crisis. You listened for hours, you held space for their pain. But when you were struggling, when you needed someone to just listen, they were nowhere to be found. And you told yourself it was okay, that people are busy, that maybe they didn't realize you needed them. But deep down you felt it, the imbalance, the weight of always being the one who gives while rarely being the one who receives. Or maybe it was the pattern you started seeing. The same people coming to you with the same problems, asking for your time, your advice, your emotional labor, and you gave it every time, because that's what kind people do. But after a while you realized they weren't actually listening. They weren't applying anything you said. They just needed someone to absorb their chaos, and you were safe, you were predictable, you wouldn't turn them away. So they kept coming back, and you kept absorbing, until you started to feel like a dumping ground instead of a friend. Most people never see what it cost you. They see the version of you that smiles and says it's fine, the version that doesn't complain, the version that makes it look easy. But they don't see the nights you stayed up processing other people's pain. They don't see the exhaustion that comes from constantly putting yourself last. They don't see the resentment that builds when your needs are consistently treated as optional while everyone else's feel urgent. You learn something painful, that your kindness wasn't always valued. Sometimes it was just convenient. Sometimes people didn't see you as someone with limits or feelings or needs of your own. They saw you as a resource. And when you started to realize that, something in you had to protect itself. Kindness without boundaries becomes self-betrayal. This is the part that people who haven't experienced it don't understand. Being kind isn't just about being nice. For people who are deeply empathetic, kindness is automatic. It's not a performance, it's how they're wired. They feel other people's emotions almost as strongly as their own. When someone hurts, they hurt. When someone needs help, they can't ignore it. It's not a choice, it's a compulsion rooted in empathy. But that level of empathy becomes a problem when it's not reciprocated. When you feel everyone's pain but no one feels yours. When you're constantly tuning into other people's needs while your own get buried. When you give and give and give and the people around you just take it as your default setting instead of recognizing it as a gift. And over time, that imbalance doesn't just hurt, it changes you. You start to notice who only reaches out when they need something, who disappears when you're not useful, who treats your presence like a given but never makes you feel seen. And those realizations don't make you bitter, they just make you careful. You learn that silence is safer, because speaking up didn't work the way you thought it would. You tried setting boundaries, you tried expressing your needs, but people responded in ways that made you feel guilty, like you were being difficult, like you were suddenly not the person they thought you were, as if your worth was tied to your availability, as if kindness meant never saying no. So you stopped explaining, you stopped trying to make people understand. Because it was exhausting to justify your own limits to people who benefited from you not having any, it was easier to just quietly step back, to become less available, to let your presence shrink in spaces where it was only valued when it served someone else. And that's how kind people become quiet. Not because they stopped caring, but because they realized that not everyone deserves access to their care, that protecting their energy isn't selfish, that silence is sometimes the only boundary that people actually respect. There's a difference between being kind and being available for consumption. Kind people often confuse the two. They think that being good means being endlessly giving, that having boundaries makes them cold or selfish. But the truth is, boundaries don't kill kindness. They protect it. They make sure your care goes to people who value it, who reciprocate it, who see you as a whole person, not just a function. You're not cold, you're conserving. The quietness people notice in you now isn't apathy, it's preservation. You still care, you still feel deeply, you still notice when people are hurting, but you've learned to pause before you pour yourself out, to ask whether this person has earned your emotional labor, whether they see you or just see what you can do for them. And that discernment, that careful quietness, is not a loss of kindness, it's the maturation of it. You're not less kind than you used to be. You're just more intentional about where your kindness goes. You've learned that not every wound is yours to heal. Not every crisis is yours to manage. Not every person who asks for your time deserves it. And learning that doesn't make you hard, it makes you whole. Kind people go quiet because the world taught them that their openness was something to exploit, not honor. They go quiet because they got tired of being the safe place for people who were never a safe place for them. They go quiet because somewhere along the way they realized that their peace matters more than their presence in spaces that drain them. And here's the part that matters. That quietness isn't permanent. It's not a closing off. It's a recalibration. You're learning who deserves your depth, who treats your kindness like the gift it is, who shows up for you the way you've always shown up for them. And when you find those people, you won't be quiet anymore. You'll open again, carefully, selectively, but you'll open. 'Cause you were never meant to stay small. You were never meant to silence yourself to make room for people who don't value you. You were just learning the difference between kindness and self-abandonment, between being loving and being used. And now that you know the difference, your quietness has purpose. It's not withdrawal, it's discernment. The people who notice you've changed might say you've become distant, cold, not the person you used to be. But they're not seeing the full picture. They're seeing the version of you that stopped overextending, that stopped pretending it didn't hurt when care wasn't returned, that stopped being endlessly available to people who were only conditionally present. Your quietness is not a flaw, it's a boundary. And boundaries are not walls, they're doors. They keep out what drains you and let in what nourishes you. The right people will understand that. They'll respect your quietness. They'll meet you in it. And slowly you'll find that you're not quiet with everyone, just with the people who never earned your noise. If this video felt a little too accurate, you're not the only one who feels this way. There are people out there who understand people who don't need you to shrink to stay. And until you find them, you can come back here whenever you need to remember that there is nothing wrong with you. If this helped even a little, you can subscribe and be part of a space where quiet people don't have to pretend. Take care of yourself. You deserve peace more than you deserve approval.